Hello, welcome back to Herba's Kitchen. Now I've got a bit of a treat today for anyone who likes a bit of Italian food. I'm going to show you how to make a carbonara with tofu bacon. So for the ingredients, we'll need some firm tofu. We're going to use half of this tub, that's 200 grams. Now for the tofu marinade, we'll need 2 tablespoons of oil. Olive oil is best, but we're using vegetable oil because that's what we have in our house. There'll be 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of miso paste, preferably a dark miso paste, but whichever one you have, half a teaspoon of garlic granules, 1 tablespoon of liquid smoke, and 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And for the carbonara itself, the carbonara sauce, there will also be some oil. That will be just the 1 tablespoon this time. 60 grams of cashews, that's just raw cashews, no salted or anything like that. 120 millilitres of water, which is about, that's half a cup. 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And half a teaspoon of salt. As you can see, I've got everything I need here. I've got a sharp knife for the tofu. I've got my blender, that's a high-speed blender. I've got a baking tray which I'll be baking the tofu in. And I've got my stove with a saucepan for the pasta. So to prepare the tofu, we need to drain it first, which can be quite difficult, especially as I'm only using half the tub. So what I'm going to do is just cut into the tub very carefully because they are full of water. And I'm going to need a bowl to do this over. So you can straight away see the water just pouring out of there. I'm going to try and leave half the water in there just so that I can preserve the other half. Just gently do that so it doesn't splatter everywhere. So it's a good idea just to try and cut the half that you need while it's still in the packaging. Like that. And then just fish your half out. So there's my block of tofu. So I'll put the other half in a sealed container and just keep it in the fridge. So to drain the tofu, there's lots of different ways you can do it. I feel like that could be an extra video on its own. All I'm going to do this time, I'm just going to gently press it down. And it's like a sponge, so you're just squeezing all the moisture out of it. And I just like to move it around the board. So obviously every time you press it, it leaves a puddle of water behind. Obviously you can do this with kitchen roll if you have it available. Squeeze it between 2 sheets of kitchen roll, that absorbs all the moisture. And the reason you need to drain it is so that when you marinate it, it can really absorb all that marinade. Okay. So that should be enough for now. So I've given the board a quick wipe off. So now I'm going to cut it. Now, because it's for carbonara, I'm going to cut it into small chunks. They're going to be about 1/4 inch. Obviously if you're making it for a sandwich or anything else, a salad, you can just cut them into thin strips, then it really looks like bacon. And ideally you cut them all of an equal size so that they cook evenly in the oven. Last cut, just stand it all up. And there we go. So, I've got all my chunks ready to go. So for the marinade, I'm going to need a container. So what I need is a sealable container, and I find it best to mix the marinade straight into that. So let's get started with that. So is the 2 tablespoons of oil. Put that over there. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Now you can use tamari if you prefer gluten-free. Tamari is the gluten-free version of soy sauce. Teaspoon this time, so 2 teaspoons of this miso. So this is dark, this is a barley, I believe, barley miso paste. Great for soups and salad marinades, really sort of full of flavour. Okay, now half a teaspoon garlic powder. It's really important not to overdo it with the garlic because obviously it's overpowering. And then a tablespoon of this liquid smoke. So all this is, it's based on natural hickory, and it's a really powerful addition to whatever you're making, really. Maple syrup. 1 tablespoon. So, that's quite easy in the container just to mix that all together. Now if you really want to add some more sort of smoky texture to it, you can add smoked paprika as well, which is what I used to use before I discovered the liquid smoke. Okay, so that's all mixed together. You can just see that's still a sort of runny-ish consistency, but it's got that paste in there that thickens it up and it will all absorb nicely into that tofu. So let's get the tofu in there. I'm going to try and be clever here and just slide it all in. That goes in, lid on, and simply shake it. So you need to leave that for at least half an hour. It can also be left in the fridge to marinate overnight. Obviously the longer you leave it, the more intense the flavour will be. So the tofu's been marinating for about 30 minutes now. I'm going to preheat the oven, and that's 200 centigrade or 190 if it's fan assisted. And while that's preheating, we can make the carbonara sauce. So for that I'll need the scales, excuse me, and the blender. So to start with, 60 grams of cashews. Remember, just raw cashews. Okay. 120 ml of water. Okay. Then 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And finally, just about half a teaspoon of salt. Great, so all we need to do now is blend that. Let's put that into the middle. Lid on. And give it a good minute or so in the blender. Okay, that's blended. So I'll just put that to the side. So it's there when we need it. What I'm also going to do is measure out the pasta. So I'm using whole wheat. Usually allow about 75 grams per person. And as this is a 2-person recipe, that's 150 grams. Okay, so we'll just put that over there. So it's time to get the tofu out. So all I'm going to do now is just transfer the tofu into the baking tray. This is a little bit big, this is the only one I've got available. And just evenly spread it out over the tray. And then just spoon any marinade that's come loose, just spoon it back over the top of the tofu. So just from that 30 minutes, this tofu has taken on the colour of the marinade, so that's brilliant. Okay, so that's going to go into the oven for 10 to 15 minutes, or until the tofu starts to go a little bit crispy on the edges. Time to get the pasta on. Now the idea of this whole recipe is to have everything ready by the time the pasta finishes, which is why I've left it until last. And the reason behind that is that obviously as soon as you take the pasta out of the water, it will start to cool. So you want the pasta cooked and then just chuck everything in there, including the sauce, and the sauce itself it coats itself on the pasta. Okay, right, here we go. Okay, so slowly bring that up to the boil. So obviously different pastas take different amounts of time. I know that this one takes about 12 minutes. Okay, so we can just wait for that to boil and wait for the tofu to finish baking in the oven. Good, right, the tofu's ready. Okay, so you can see there that it's started to go crispy and nice and brown. Hasn't stuck to the tray, so that's good. So I'm just going to move that to the side, just like here, and that pasta's ready. So I need to drain the pasta. Just drop that there, drop that there. So what I'm going to do is, after I've drained it, I'm going to put the pasta straight back into the saucepan and add the sauce. Move that. Put the sauce straight in there. It doesn't seem like there's enough, but there is. Right, so it's important to just get it spread around as soon as you get it in there. The sauce has started to cook itself on the pasta, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so that is ready to plate up. So, obviously being pasta, it's not really a dish that you can prepare ahead, so we are literally going to eat this as soon as we finish filming. So what I'm going to do is just evenly distribute it in the plates. It's much better to put the pasta in the plates and then add the bacon. That way you get a fair amount each. No one can hog the bacon. Right. There's that. So I just literally just ration it out, one spoon at a time. Oh, I've forgotten which one was which. So what I've shown you is the basic recipe. Now it goes really well with things like mushroom and sweet corn. We often add those. It works really well. But as it is, that will work fine. And you can obviously just mix it up and it'll just be just like a carbonara. So that's the end of the recipe. Do let me know how you get on if you have a go at this. Leave any feedback in the comments section down below. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.